Lang Lang uses it, Yu Zhuang uses it, and Martha Algerig uses it. They all use it, and if they don't use it, they are memorizing music wrong. The method I'm about to reveal to you is scientifically proven to be the fastest and the best method of memorization, and like all great methods, it is simple and easy to use. This method breaks down into 3 parts: chunking, analysis, and revision. We will look at each in turn, but let's start with chunking. Chunking is the fastest method of memorization and works incredibly well by itself when memorizing shorter pieces, though it plays a very important role when applied to the context of longer works. Chunking is grounded on the psychological principle that the brain can only cope with learning a small group of short and memorable fragments at any one time. If you tried to memorize an entire piano piece at once, you would inevitably fail. To make a piece easier both to memorize and to learn, pianists break it down into chunks. The second movement to Haydn's Sonata No. 50 in D major, for example. By the way, I'll be making a full recording of the sonata at some point in the near future, so please subscribe if you're looking forward to that, and I will see you there. The second movement of the sonata only took about 30 minutes of total work to memorize. I don't claim this to be impressive, but the slow movement is highly contrapuntal in texture, and I'd barely practiced it before I started memorizing, which means I must have been doing something to accelerate my learning speed. That thing was chunking, and I'll show you exactly how I applied it to this Haydn movement. To begin with, I memorized each bar within the first system of music reasonably well. Then I combined these small, easier to memorize chunks into the next chunk, the full system. Memorizing the full system would have been difficult had I tried to memorize it all in one go, but since I already knew the smaller components, memorizing the system was just a matter of memorizing the order of the already pre-learned chunks. I wasn't yet fully confident with the first system, and we'll learn how I became fully confident later on in the chapter on revision, but for a few minutes of work, the ability to play from memory the entire first system of a highly contrapuntal choral-style piano piece is a revelation of what this method can achieve. Following on from the first system, I then repeated the whole process for the second system, that is memorizing each bar then memorizing the whole system. And then I was able to memorize up to the first repeat, just by combining the 2 systems I had already memorized. The best way to memorize each chunk in my experience, whatever the chunk size or your stage in memorization, is to enhance repetition and play through the chunk with the sheet music, probably about 10 times, then remove the sheet music and play through another 10 times. If you make a mistake or experience a memory lapse, refer back to the sheet music and identify where that memory slip occurred, then devote special attention to that section of the sheet music. That way you decrease the chance of memorizing your music incorrectly. While I was memorizing the B section of this piece, which I would later combine together with the chunk that makes up the A section, I noticed that the rhythm in bar 11 was similar to the rhythm in bar 6. Could this similarity aid my memorization? Yes, it could, and that brings us to our next technique, analysis. When I was memorizing Grieg's Wedding Day at Troldhaugen, I hadn't yet fully learned the difficult left-hand arpeggios that contribute to the climax of the A section. But I could still memorize this piece because I was using a different kind of memory to reconstruct it in my mind than the memory that was slowly learning the arpeggios. The memory we use to memorize whole chunks and group them together consciously is explicit memory, while the memory that memorizes individual flares and techniques is muscle memory. When orchestras play Flash of the Bumblebee, they aren't reading every single note. Instead, they are using the sheet music to give cues to their explicit memory, while the muscle memory takes over the details. Muscle memory has the tendency to be more solid and reliable than explicit memory, as the learning process for muscle memory tends to be more intense. But with the help of analysis, we can draw upon the power of muscle memory for the purpose of memorization. In the Haydn slow movement, a good analysis should reveal that there are several recurring motifs in the music. To apply analysis to memorization, we need to note the similarities and differences between recurring material. The similarities will help to pinpoint the moment in the explicit memory by tagging it as a repeat of an earlier moment. In Wedding Day at Troldhaugen, to give an obvious example, the high level of repetition makes the piece much easier to memorize. It is easy to apply this to the A section where we can rely on muscle memory much more, but in the B section, the slow ballade, careful observation will reveal that bars 59 to 74 and 91 to 106 are identical except for the addition of several important bell-like tones. The difference between similar passages are fundamental in memorization, because if we forget to memorize these differences as well as the similarities, we will inevitably play the music incorrectly, possibly leading to further memory lapses when progressing from the incorrectly remembered sections. In short, analysis is a powerful tool when utilized correctly and is a promising method of memorization. But overall, it is only useful in optimizing the process of memorization that already stands on a solid basis. One of these bases is chunking, but there is a better one. The method that is undoubtedly the best and most strongly recommended by scientists and musicians alike is optimized revision. To understand how this method came into use, we need to understand how the process of memory in the brain actually works. In his book, The Brain That Changes Itself, Norman Dewage explains that the brain, rather than being divided into specialized areas as once commonly believed, is instead constantly evolving and repurposing different areas. The way this repurposing works is that any neurons that have fallen into disuse become absorbed into other areas and are used for a different task. This means if you don't consistently review a memory, eventually the neurons that stored that memory will be repurposed and the memory will be forgotten. This tells us something important about the brain. To retain a memory, revision at carefully spaced times is crucial for optimized learning. So what is the best way to review a memory? Scientific studies show that the best method of memorization is to start learning intensely, then slowly space out the revisions more and more. If you learned a new piano passage, then reviewed it in the next hour, then the next day, then the next week, and so on, you would be applying the optimal revision process to your memorization. In the second movement of the Haydn Sonata, though I did memorize it in about 30 minutes of total work, I didn't do 30 minutes of work all at once. Instead, I applied this revision process to each system and boosted my results. Whichever your revision stage, though, it is important to check back with the sheet music occasionally. Memories become flawed over time, and it's important to make sure you are playing the sheet music as written. This is especially important in complex scores where the markings of finesse have a strong chance of being forgotten. In short, there are 3 tricks that you can use to memorize music like a professional. First of all, chunking will dramatically reduce the amount of time needed to learn a piece, and is a powerful method for learning short pieces in a short amount of time. Combined with analysis, we can then enhance the power of muscle memory and make connections that help us understand repetitive material and utilize it in our favor. Finally, the power of revision will ensure that your memorization remains solidified in your mind with minimal effort, leaving room to continue learning and playing, reassured that you'll have done everything necessary to ensure the success of your memorization. Thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe if you support me making similar content to this in future. If you enjoyed my video on the secret method of piano memorization, you will also enjoy watching my upload on extended piano techniques. And if you like my channel, I also recommend you watch my playlist of beautiful and relaxing music and original compositions, which you can click right here. Thank you again for your support, and I'll see you there.